I think it's the desire and the joy that allowed me to leave behind all the stuff that I thought made me happy. If you have a job, you probably don't have to give it up. And you just have to worry about, oh my God, my desk is going to go from my home to like everywhere.
Welcome to Women We Should Know with international speaker, mindset reset mentor, author, and your host, Leslie Michaels. With audacious honesty and candor, the Women We Should Know podcast presents the wisdom and life-empowering insights of women who are the embodiments of innovation and social evolution. Please join Leslie as she shares potent conversations that will inspire your personal and professional evolutions.
Welcome back to Women We Should Know. I am so happy that you are joining with us today. It has been an interesting period of time. I hear from people all around the country, in fact, all around the world. I hope in this interesting period that you have discovered wonderful pieces of yourself that maybe were long hidden, or that maybe you just hadn't explored even though you knew they were there. As those of you who have visited us before know, Women We Should Know is all about sharing the voices of audacious, courageous, boundary-breaking women. And so we are delighted today to have exactly that kind of a woman with us. Heather Markel, CPC. She, in 2017, walked away from her highly successful 25 plus years in corporate America to pursue her passion, traveling the world and meeting wonderful people. Oh, that sounds so relaxing and enjoyable. She intended this to be a career break, but ended up turning her passion into a full way of life. Since January 18, she's been to 6 continents and 27 countries, including the blessing of getting marooned in New Zealand for 2 years during the pandemic. I have friends in New Zealand. I can't imagine a better place to be marooned during that.
Yeah.
Heather now teaches frustrated professionals over 40 who want to leave their job to travel full-time, tackle the mindset, money, and planning logistics to make it happen. She may have inadvertently started the Great Resignation. Wouldn't that be fun to see? Now, to make her travels a little bit easier, she has an edge on some of us. She speaks 6 languages. I'm betting she's going to tell us how to get around that part if we don't. Her passion for culture and travel started when she spent a summer as a teenager living with a French host family in Normandy. The only child of divorced parents from New York City, Heather found herself with 8 siblings on a farm in the middle of nowhere in France. She learned to love beer, appreciate Calvados, and love cows. Heather has created the Expat Coach Association and the Expat Coach Directory. And she is going to tell us all about that, including creating her Bull Buster business coaching. I have to be very careful to say that correctly. Now, I know all of you are out there and eager to meet this amazing woman. So let us introduce her without further ado. Hi, Heather. I am so pleased and honored to have you with us today.
Hi, Leslie. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, there are only about, 10,000 things I want to ask you about. We won't have time for all of them. But I have this little fun Leslie tradition. At the beginning of every episode, I enjoy asking the guest, what is one thing that is not on your bio that you would enjoy people knowing about you?
Let's see which one to pick. How about I have braved doing stand-up comedy 6 times at an open mic. And on the second time, my unexpected soon-to-be ex-husband walked into the audience.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Let it never be said that you are a shrinking violet. That's fantastic. And how was it received overall, your comedy?
Really well. That one particular one, that second time was a little nerve-wracking, but other than that, I think I learned a stand-up comedy is surprisingly difficult. And it's even more difficult when you pressure yourself to have a new routine each time instead of like improving the routine that you start with. But I learned a lot, and I think it was pretty well received.
So are we going to see you on the comedy stage anytime soon?
Probably not right now, but maybe on the TEDx stage, and maybe I'll be funny there.
Oh, there we go. Because yes, I know you are on the threshold of delivering a TEDx talk on your life. So let's dive into your life. Now, first of all, how does a woman who has an amazing life, an amazing career, a beautiful apartment in New York with a concierge 24 hours a day, living the high life that a lot of people look at and say, oh, I'd love to have that. How do you go from that to a backpack?
Yeah. Well, for me, I realized I had all of these things. I mentioned I'm divorced. So I was, in addition to having all of the apartment and all that stuff, I had a husband. I had all these things that society tells me I'm supposed to have that are supposed to make me happy. And ironically, they didn't. So I got divorced, and then I realized, well, I've got this job and I'm not happy here either. And I realized what was missing from all of these things in my life that were supposed to make me happy. The thing that was missing was me. Like, I wasn't able to show up fully as me. And, you spend enough time feeling that way, you start asking, well, who am I anymore? Like, I felt completely disconnected from whatever me was supposed to be. And so I think the desire to, reconnect with myself was a giant impetus to go traveling. And the backpack part, I mean, I'm not one of those people that carries like a 40-liter backpack. I can't do it. I have like a carry-on sized bag with rollers and a smaller backpack. But I think it's the desire and the joy that allowed me to leave behind all the stuff that I thought made me happy. And once I realized I was so much happier out in the world doing exactly what I love doing, the method of it became less important. And all that stuff I thought I wanted and needed, I suddenly didn't anymore. So I think it was just a gradual learning of, shock, like, oh my God, I what did I just do? Am I insane? And then kind of getting more and more into it and be like, yeah, I did this. And if I did this, what more can I do? And, and it becomes worth downsizing and living differently to be able to connect to a dream and build from there.
As you're telling this story, and you come to the point of saying downsizing, there's a recontextualizing there that's going on, because maybe you downsized your stuff, but it sounds like you really upsized your life.
Exactly. Yep. Because it is our stuff in great part that keeps us from doing anything. Because I mean, I'm the classic, like, I found, and I know I'm not alone, that because I was unhappy, somehow having more stuff became the substitute for all that unhappiness. Oh, a new thing. I have a new thing today. I can focus on the newness, right?
That's right.
And so then I have all this stuff, and then it becomes, oh my God, I have so much stuff. How would I ever leave? Where would I
Right.
put all this stuff? Like, and so
Right.
it traps you. And that's the irony, is like you create the trap from the life that you actually really want.
Exactly. We go from owning stuff to being owned by stuff.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing. And it's been well documented that Americans are stuffaholics, shopaholics, stuffaholics. We are the ultimate capitalists.
Yes.
Yes. So kudos to you for changing the volume, changing the radio station. Okay, so here you are, going to go out and find yourself. How do you even decide where to launch to? You know where you're launching from now.
Yeah. To be honest, the most stressful thing about changing my life was, well, first it was telling my mother.
Oh, well, there is that move.
Second, like I actually thought that, telling my boss would be this like pivotal moment, and that I was resigning. And it was actually the most anticlimactic moment I experienced. The most stressful thing was, where will I start? Because it took me 2 weeks of drama, because, I'm used to corporate vacations at this point. So
Yes.
they're 2 weeks long. And so I'm thinking like, where am I going to go? Oh my God, I can go anywhere.
Mhm.
And this didn't occur to me on corporate vacation because I was locked into a short time frame. It was always
Right.
Europe or somewhere in the US, very easy. Like I felt limited. Well,
Right.
now with the world literally my oyster, I panicked. And
That's
I remember,
interesting. That's really interesting.
I remember stressing to my friend, like, I could go here, I could go there, I don't know. And then if I pick here, there's 2 airports. Which one do I go to? I was like, I made everything this big drama. And I ended up picking Costa Rica because I had heard great things about it from friends who had been. It seemed relatively close to home. So if I needed to go home, or I didn't like it, or whatever the case may be, I could easily get back. So it just, at the time, I didn't realize that I was making my choice by what I felt instead of what I was totally thinking. So it was the beginning of a transition of life from head to heart.
Okay, there's a whole lot to unpack there. I have to just briefly touch on the fact that the anticlimax of the event was telling your boss. How does that make you feel in terms of, am I valued here? Was I ever valued here? I mean, these are don't let me project on you. Those are the thoughts I would have. How did that affect you?
So it was actually quite funny, because when I quit, I wasn't sure that I was really valued. And after I quit, I had these conversations with colleagues that were really touching, that almost made me cry, where I learned that I was greatly appreciated and greatly valued. But I honestly, in the day-to-day context, I mean, sure, people said thank you. People said, like, you do a job, and it depended on the boss. I had some bosses that were better than others. And so
we can all claim that.
yeah. So I think I overall I didn't feel that I was valued for my skills, if you will. Like the things that I wanted to be recognized for weren't relevant to the jobs that I was doing. And then there were other things, though, that people appreciated, which was nice to have reflected back. And I did love that, I felt like leaving was connecting me with people in a beautiful way that I didn't expect. So it was definitely a nice departure.
Nice. Okay. Let's go to the head and the heart. How does one even recognize that they are making that transition to the point of being able to language and articulate it.
So you mean how do we recognize that we're deciding with our head versus our heart?
Yes. But you said that you noticed that that was this moment when you were coming from your heart instead of your head. How does it happen that you were able to realize that? What gave you that aha moment?
So in the moment of deciding to go to Costa Rica, I didn't really know, I didn't recognize that that was what was happening, but later on I did. And what happened was I had spent so many years in my head talking my heart out of what I wanted to do, with all of the other voices in my head from other people and society, that I remember when I got to Costa Rica and I was waiting online for immigration. I've always known I have a heart, but like I didn't really feel it. And it was like I was flooded with this warmth. And it was like my heart had this voice that I had never heard. And my heart said, "Thank you for doing this." And I was just like,
brilliant. That's a TED Talk. That's a book. That's a lecture series, because going back to the fact that we are stuff addicted, we got there through our heads.
And work is very much head. Put your head down and do your job. Like there isn't, at least in my experience, there wasn't a lot of room for heart other than, sure, I think I was fortunate that my company was very compassionate. If you needed time off for something, if you had a family matter, they didn't make you work like 80 hours a week, that kind of thing. But I didn't feel that my heart was a needed part of my daily duties, or that I was making humanity richer and richer not in money, but in everything else but money.
In the parts that count.
Yeah. So I think we are very conditioned to think versus feel, and that's one of the many things that I'm grateful to travel for giving me the time and space to work on feeling instead of thinking, and work on being instead of doing.
Sign me up.
Come on over.
So you get to Costa Rica. Now, you're really in the inception stages still of this experience. Possibly even still getting your metaphoric feet on the ground, as it were. Mm-hmm. How did you progress through Costa Rica and on from there to realize that this is your life path?
Yeah. So the thing that happened when I chose Costa Rica, I decided to go for 6 weeks, which to me seemed like so long, because usually it's 2 weeks. 6 weeks of vacation. What? Oh my God. And I had to return for jury duty, which is why it was 6 weeks. But I decided obviously I'll do 2 weeks in Costa Rica, and then I'll go to Peru for 2 weeks, and then I'll go to Argentina for 2 weeks, because it's like the magic 2 week, 2 week, 2 week. Mm-hmm. And before I blinked, I had booked all my hotels, all my transportation, and some of my activities in Costa Rica for like the first 2 weeks. And then I had to actually like viscerally stop myself and be like, well, wait, if I want to experience go with the flow travel, that seems like it would be different than vacation. I need to stop planning, because now I'm removing any possibility for me to stay longer in a place I like, or less time in a place I don't like. I'm robbing myself of this opportunity. So I stopped planning.
Was that hard?
It was very hard.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Should I pick up the planning like a weekend? Like, what do I do? I needed, as the corporate person, you're like, well, I'm leaving on this date. I'm returning on this date. I have 3 days, and I got to see all these 15 tourist sites, and I got to get on this tour and that, Mm-hmm. And this was a whole, like, allowing rather than controlling was a whole new way of being for me that was very uncomfortable. And I think that that's one of the benefits of full-time travel is you will be very uncomfortable, if not in what you pack, then in your experience, because like it usually doesn't go as planned and there's always lessons in there. And so what happened for me is I navigated, I went on my planned travels, and there was a bus ride I took to La Fortuna, where I ended up meeting this lovely couple that I'm still in touch with today, Maggie and Lloyd. And they were heading to, after La Fortuna, we hung out for a couple days. They headed on to a place called Samara. And we wanted
Now,
to.
is this all in Costa Rica?
It's all in Costa Rica.
Okay.
So we had planned to meet up there about a week later. Now, I, on my pre-planned travels, ended up Samara was sort of like, I don't know, sort of southwest of where we were, and I went all the way south to a place called Corcovado Island, making my way down there. And Corcovado Island is like, I was like on a tent on the beach, middle of nowhere. It's like you can only a certain number of people are allowed, even to go into the park per day, only a certain amount of people. So it's very small and remote. So,
Sounds
internet
kind of protected and
yes,
and respected.
yes. And
That's
so
lovely.
So internet connection, not so great. Here I am used to like luxury hotels, and I'm like in a tent where, let me just say, like the whole toilet experience, not quite, so it's suddenly I'm in the last day of the, I have one more night. That evening is going to be the last evening of my 2 weeks of pre-planned travel.
Right.
And I need to meet Maggie and Lloyd in Samara. And I asked the hotel manager for help, and he basically, I think he was miserable in his job. And so he was useless and had no interest in helping me because he wasn't happy with, what his circumstances were. The internet.
So that's worldwide. That's not just here.
Correct. Yeah. And so good reflection, right? And then I sat there, and for hours, I spent the whole afternoon figuring out, how am I getting to Samara? And I had thought there was a boat, because we were right by the water, that with the water, a boat was the only way to get to Corcovado Island. And so I ultimately figured out the only way for me to get to Samara was to spend a whopping amount of money and fly there, which was over my budget, or take an overnight bus trip that sounded very dangerous. I suddenly realized.
Now that's a couple of options to be faced with. That's life and death kind of stuff.
Yeah, it felt that way, and so I realized, I'm like, I quit my job to travel full time, and I can't figure out how to meet Maggie and Lloyd. What the hell am I doing? Like, I failed at travel.
Right.
So I had a whole meltdown. I just was like, I don't think this is the life for me. If I can't figure out how to do this, I think I should perhaps just give up and just accept this was a 2-week trip. This is more than this experience isn't what I thought. Let me just pack up. I'll look at flights back to New York and just go home and just ask for my job back. So I had this whole pity party and felt like a failure. And then somewhere in there, after I stopped, like dried my tears and toughened up, this voice said, well, what if instead of you trying to get to Maggie and Lloyd in Samara, what if you just see where you can go and go there? And I was like, well, that's an interesting idea. And once I did that, like, I'm like, oh, like I immediately like found a route like to a place I'd never heard of, and ended up like having this whole spiritual encounter. And it was that moment of resourcefulness, combined with faith in myself, combined with flow and allowing flow to happen and guide me, that completely changed the game for me. And from that moment on, I knew this is the right choice, and this is where I belong, and this is where I'm going to stay.
That is brilliant. The whole time you're telling me this, for telling all of us about this, I'm remembering what the great Muhammad Ali used to say. He always used to say, if your dreams don't scare the hell out of you, your dreams aren't big enough.
Mm.
And you are a brilliant example of dreaming big.
Yep.
Yes. So,
but it's not enough
you're-
to dream. I just have to say, it's not enough to dream, because I dreamed big for a long time,
Yes.
but I didn't take action on those dreams. And
That's
so
right.
it gets depressing after a while to have big dreams and not take action. Like there's,
That's right.
So having the big dream and taking the leap are both important, I think.
They absolutely, yes, you have to activate, or it becomes even more frustrating, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more depressing. It just becomes the list of things we didn't have the courage to try.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what if we fell down? We know how to get up. We learned that when we were still in diapers. So here you are, really, we are hanging on to the coffee table, fell down, got up. We know how. So here you are, you've got your feet on the ground. You had this great spiritual experience, and this is the life you're going to lead. Can you we can't hear about every detail of the 6 continents and the 27 countries, but can you give us just some highlights of moments that were pivotal in terms of introducing you to you?
So obviously that Costa Rica one was huge.
Yes.
I went to Portugal, and I rented a car, and I had, I always take GPS, because years ago, I think before, I don't think GPS was really a thing. I was in a car with a friend of mine in Rhode Island, and she put the map in my hand and asked me to help navigate us back to Boston from Providence. And somehow I navigated us to Pennsylvania.
Okay, yes, I know those roads very well. That was a big deviation.
So I've never trusted myself with navigation since. And so got the GPS, and in Portugal decided one day, after I was living in the same spot for about a month, and I used the GPS all the time, and I decided one day to turn it off and risk getting lost. And that's really scary when you're in a country that you know but don't know, and especially scarier when you don't speak the language, because, by the way, I do speak 6 languages, but Portuguese is not one of them. And by the way, Portuguese in Portugal is radically different than Brazilian Portuguese, which sounds a bit like Spanish, and you can actually get on with people and communicate in Spanish, not in Portugal. So
good to know.
Yeah. So that day that I turned that GPS off, what was really weird, the first thing was I drove down these roads where I kind of recognized them, but realized my focus had been so much on the GPS, it wasn't on the roads around me. I never,
Right.
So now I'm getting landmarks, and I'm like, oh,
Right.
There's that tree that I know. There's that, I'm looking at what's in front of me. And a lot of the experience made me more present. And realized that we live so much of our life planning for a future that we forget to just be in the moment. And that was another huge lesson for me about, just being, just what is today about? And I didn't realize how much I've done of talking to people, and my brain is thinking of 3 other things at the same time. And there were these powerful moments in travel where I was like, oh, I'm 100% listening, whether it's to this person or the animals circling around me, or just being at this gorgeous scene. And there's nothing else that matters except right now and taking in this beautiful moment. So presence was another huge, huge lesson. Another one was, I'd say, faith. There's been numerous times where I feel like probably in retrospect, my life might have been in danger. And I feel like the universe has always been there for me. From a moment I took a walk to a waterfall in Costa Rica, and I ended up I didn't know I was walking alone on this road, and I was going this way, this guy's walking towards me, and something just intuitively just said, oh, this guy's going to say hi to you, and not in a welcome, like I wasn't welcome to it. And then he sure enough said hi, so I said hi, and I kept going, and then he stopped me and he said, oh, I didn't realize that you weren't from here. Would you like to come with me? I'd like to show you my secret place. Now, thank God, the language from a strange man to a woman, what does that mean, your secret place? And noticing he's looking at the bulge in my pocket of my phone the whole time he's talking to me. I said no, and then continued on my way. And later, when I was going to leave the waterfall, I realized, oh gosh, like I don't want to end up alone on this road again. What am I going to do? I befriended a couple at the waterfall, which started chatting. They left before I did, and then it started raining, and so I took my time getting back. And as I was walking back down the road, the couple passed me in their vehicle and asked if I'd like a lift. And like, being rescued like that. When I was in Johannesburg, South Africa, I took a train by myself from Johannesburg to Cape Town, which ended up being delayed by I don't know, like a day. I mean, it was insane. It was like an overnight train ride that took another day, and it was an insane amount of mishaps. And I've heard all kinds of danger stories. And anyway, this South African couple who were like 2 doors down from me, for no reason I understand, just immediately took a liking to me and offered to, take care of me the whole time. Because a lot of, I don't speak Afrikaans either. I speak German, but Afrikaans is more like Dutch.
That's right.
And they translated everything for me. They made sure when we had to spend, we pulled into Cape Town at 2 a.m, and you cannot get out as a white person in Cape Town at 2 a.m.
Can't.
So they stayed in the train. They could have gone back to their accommodation, but they stayed in the train with me, and made sure to walk me to a taxi the next morning. And so I felt very much like someone was looking out for me and there for me. And in New Zealand, I mean, the countless people that took me in, took care of me, I just feel over and over that part of my journey has been also this, I've always been independent. I do everything by myself, and learning that it's okay to accept help from other people, and how lucky and grateful I am to receive that aid from others has also been a huge part of connecting to me, and understanding also that I try to be giving too. I volunteered in a secondhand shop. I try to look out for people that need help and help them too. So I think it's very reciprocal, and just noticing who you are and who you attract and the experiences you attract, because I have been, also flabbergasted by, say Cape Town as an example. I've been in places over and over and over again and had wonderful experiences, and someone else goes there once and gets mugged. Why?
Right.
Right. So so that's all part of, I think, the experience, and gaining awareness of myself, and what this whole journey is like, and all the lessons that go along with it.
Yes. And I believe that, or it's my observation, that women who have achieved a certain level of success, particularly women who don't have children, that we tend to be supremely independent to the extreme, and that many of us are being asked in different ways in our lives now to soften a little bit towards ourselves, actually, and to allow ourselves more grace and support. So That is beautiful. Now, I want to keep talking about this, but I don't want to not give us time to discuss these amazing things that you have done, this creation of this Facebook community, this creation of the expat coaching directory, and then the Bullbuster. So where along your path did all of this start to formulate?
So one thing I've known for years about myself while in corporate was that whatever it is that I'm meant to do in life, there's no job description for it. There's no, I'm creative, I'm entrepreneurial. That's always been a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became certified as a professional coach in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I created a company called Spice Up Work. And that's just the irony, right? That I wanted to help people like enjoy their work. And then I transitioned into expat coaching. Now, I had been an expat before quitting to travel. I studied overseas in 3 different countries. I've lived with two host families in France. And then I studied a year, I worked a year after college in Europe. So I know what the expat experience is like. And so I started by working with other people that were, there's a core cycle of experience that an expat tends to have. And so I started my business, and I would meet all these people that would, I kind of reached out for community. There was something in those days called Ning. It was like a forum, and I had like, a couple hundred people that were expat coaches around the world. And so I'd meet all these people, these prospective clients that would say, wow, some of them had passed the depression cycle of the expat, and they said, oh, gosh, I've never heard of anyone that does what you do. And I wish I had met you 6 months ago, whatever the conversation was. And I'm like, how do they not know anybody that does what I do? Because I've got this community of like hundreds of people around the world, like something's off here. So I went into Wikipedia and I put an entry in for expat coaches. And then I started an expat coach directory to try to give visibility to this industry. Originally, I used my Photoshop and Dreamweaver skills back then. It was a terrible, terrible directory. But had everybody listed. And then of course the members were like, oh, it looks terrible and we need a better site. And I'm like, I agree with you. Are you willing to help me pay for it? Because honestly, like to hire a web designer out of my pocket, and lo and behold, they were. And so we created a membership experience where there's an expat coach association and directory, and got a much nicer look and feel to it, and got more exposure for the people, the coaches around the world that help in this niche. Now, while that was, happening over a period of years, the thing is, I'm a business person. So I have this weird combo of like creative and good business sense. Which don't always happen in the same person.
Right.
So I noticed more and more that I was being drawn to helping people grow their businesses, and what was stopping everyone from like having success is what I call, well, I don't know if we're allowed to, I don't know what language we can use on the show, so I'll just say BS.
You just use whatever language you want. I figure we're all grown-ass women, and we
okay. So it's the bullshit, right? That we tell ourselves that often stands in the way. That always stands in the way of growing businesses, which is why I came up with this word, bullbuster, right? I help people bust their bullshit.
Right.
So I got into that, and then what happened was, this is the other thing as we evolve as humans. I think most coaches go through this, but I'm sure also most humans, is that especially when you own a business, the business is a reflection of you. And I was evolving, and I had built up all this prestige in the expat world, and I realized my heart was going a different direction. And so I still run the Expat Coach Association and Directory, but I am not an expat coach anymore. So I moved into the business coaching, and then learned a whole way of being with helping people with their businesses, until when I quit corporate in 2017, I started a blog called Heather Begins. And that was just a blog. It was literally like there was nothing to that site except my blogging about my experiences traveling, which today has evolved into like, travel information,
Right.
as well as helping, all the resources and tools to help people, who want to either quit or take their job with them and travel full time, which parlayed into that Facebook group, Full-Time Travelers and Nomads, which now has almost 3,000 people who are either already on the road traveling themselves looking for community or want to travel in the future full-time and are looking for information. So
it's kind of full circle back to the expat thing, but in a different manifestation.
Yeah, expats are quite different than travelers, right? And expats, to me, how I define it, you stay in one location for a period of time.
I see.
A nomad or traveler is going to move anywhere from every few days, every few weeks, every few months, but they don't go and, I ended up being an unexpected expat in New Zealand, right? That wasn't planned.
I get you. It's
right?
It's a longevity definition. Yeah. The definition is based in longevity.
It's the intention. Are you staying in one? Are you moving full time from one place to another, or are you roaming full time? And that's how I distinguish between the two different experiences.
That's very clarifying. Thank you for that. Let's say we have some women out here and they're listening to this and they're saying, sounds good, but
great.
What are you going to say to them?
Well, there's the bull, right? It's like all of the stuff I do comes together. The reason I start with clients on mindset is because that is where all of the buts reside.
Right.
So I go into the buts, and wow, that sounded really bad. But anyway, but yeah, I go into the bull, right? So it's like, what is really holding us back? What is the but about? And the number one fear or thing holding everyone back from traveling full time is the money. And so, it's how on earth do you afford this? And there are 1,000,001 answers to that. And I teach all of this stuff in my programs and my coaching, so it's like too much to go into in a couple minutes. But basically, you need to do the work to figure out how you want to travel, what's important to you. And by the way, what you think is important to you may in the end not be. And then in terms of, the money, well, one thing people have today that I didn't, because, I actually, when I quit, I tried to get a sabbatical and I thought, I'd take like a year off.
Sure.
Right.
Safety nets.
Yeah. And I couldn't get that because that was just not accepted back then, but not for traveling anyway.
Right.
But today, remote work is completely possible. So
COVID, the blessing of COVID.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Keep your job. If you have a job, you probably don't have to give it up. You can keep that income, and you just have to worry about, oh my God, my desk is going to go from my home to like everywhere. Like, how am I doing that?
Right.
So, and I've talked to remote workers. There are a number of problems that go along, like, your colleagues might judge you, right? Because now you're like, oh yeah, you're in the Caribbean, sure, you're working, right? When you actually legitimately are, but because you're traveling, there's a whole boatload of perceptions that can come up with that.
Right.
So, but that's the thing. So one way to handle the money piece and the but, right, is figure out how much money you need. And then, like, how do you want to do it? Do you want to do it that easy way? There is no really easy way, right? With keeping your job, or do you want to shift how you relate to work and money and have a different experience? And they're all possible.
That's great. Now, what about couples? Do you ever work with couples who have said, okay, we can do this?
Absolutely. Couples, families too, because there are, and especially like in my Facebook group, that's what I love. There are people of all walks of life, singles, couples, families, and all of them are making the full-time travel dream possible. And it's really just about looking at, again, what are your goals? What are your intentions? How do you want to make this journey? And what do you need to make the journey possible? And then just creating it, right? Rather than it being a dream that you think like, that'd be nice someday. No, it's actually that someday is going to be 6 months from now. And how are we going to make that possible?
That's right. Well, the world has gotten so much smaller. I mean, when you and I were young, the world was a lot bigger place.
Yep.
And technology has shrunk it down. The instantaneous news 20 cycle has shrunk it down. And now COVID was a huge shrinking of the world. So
Yep.
there are so many options. And I love that you were so generous with sharing all of these different plans that you have. I tell you, women, it's worth giving it a thought. I don't travel full time, but I'm a big traveler and always have been. I encourage you to go to the program notes. For those of you who are new to Women We Should Know, you just go to lesliemichaels.com/podcast, and you'll find Heather Markel's podcast. There will be all of her program notes. And within that, in her bio, we will have her URL. We will have her contact information. We will have all of the various different levels of contact information that she wants to provide for you in order to interact with her Facebook page, or interact with this community, or interact with her directly to see if this is something you really want to explore for your own life. I love that you are a single woman out in the world living an audaciously free life and helping other people to do the same, Heather. This is amazing.
Thank you. And I feel very blessed. And if I can inspire others to have that freedom and, free yourself from something that you don't like and recreate something you love, then that just delights me.
Absolutely. And this is the time of the woman. Everyone from the Dalai Lama on has said this. And I speak with women every day. I've started hearing the same sentence over and over again. It's fascinating. There's a movement going on, and we're being introduced, and they say, well, I'm in a period of transition and I don't know what that means. I think that is amazing that there are so many women in transition and not demanding to know what that means. And you may find many of them out there on the trail with you. So for all of you women out there who are listening, who have thought about traveling full time, thought it was a great dream, or who are finding yourself in transition and don't know what that means, I encourage you to have a conversation with Heather. Thank you for being with us today. I trust that, as always, you were able to gain a nugget, a bit of wisdom, an inspiration to live as a bigger, bolder you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you received inspiration for expanding your own social innovation and influence. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at lesliemichaels.com/podcast. For more tips, insights, and support in creating a fully audacious professional and personal lifestyle you love, visit our Women We Should Know community on Facebook.